Welcome back to GoldLocked, the series where we spin a wheel and it chooses what zone we're locked to and how much we must pay before we can spin again. So join me as we explore Warcraft's forgotten zones, digging up old secrets, indulging in obscure lore, and rediscovering the long-lost gold farms. This is GoldLocked. On the last episode, the wheel sent us to the Howling Fjord, with a gold tribute of 200,000 to be paid before we can spin again. We scoured and plundered every nook and cranny, and managed to bring in 83,000 gold. This episode, I want to push hard to hit that goal. I am very excited to spin that wheel again and see where it sends us next. And this zone still has a few secrets up its sleeve, including 3 rare spawns that we've yet to see, some potential crafting recipes that could make us a bit of extra gold, and finally, the 2 dungeons, Utgarde Keep and Utgarde Pinnacle. Will it be enough to get us out of here, or will we be trapped for another episode? Let's find out. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of this video, I want to give myself a little side challenge. So I've never really considered myself very lucky when it comes to ultra rare drops. I've also never really enjoyed fishing in video games. So I thought, why not combine these 2 things and set myself a fishing challenge? In the last episode, we discovered that inland fishing was basically useless. But the fangtooth herring fishing schools are hiding something. 3 things to be exact. The dark herring, the dustbringer, and the sea turtle. All 3 of them are incredibly rare, and my challenge is that I must fish up at least one of them before I can leave this zone. So we'll check in on Wheelboy's fishing journey from time to time and see how he's getting on. And now, the first item on the agenda, a sneaky little gold making method that has been hiding right under our noses this entire time. And it happens to take place right here at the Utgarde Inn. Between farming sessions, this is where Wheelboy hangs out. It's cozy, it's quaint, and it's right next to the boat to Ironforge. But the unassuming innkeeper of this tavern, a Miss Hazel Legrasse, has a secret. She sells flowers. And these flowers can be resold on the auction house for a nice little bit of profit. You see, these flowers can be equipped as offhand weapons. I expect they're used in transmogs or for roleplay, and then the people who want these flowers either don't know of or can't be bothered to find the NPC that sells them. So they're happy to buy them off the auction house for a premium. Now, they don't sell very often, so this isn't going to make us rich. But considering they cost silvers to buy, and they can sell for between 100 and 500 gold, and it takes just seconds to do, this is absolutely not something we should sleep on. So I'm going to snap a few of these up, relist them on the auction house, and we'll come back later and see if they've sold. Now, up next, revenge. In the last episode, we gave skinning a try. There are hundreds of these shovel tusks just dotted around the Howling Fjord, but they were uncooperative. In fact, they were straight up reluctant to let me have their skin. They ended up killing me several times, which resulted in a much lower gold per hour, and more importantly, it damaged my fragile ego. But we are a much higher level now and much stronger, so I think it's time we rectify the situation. Not only that, but on one of my fly-arounds I noticed a new potential skinning location. In the southeast of the map, there are seals. Lots of seals. Seals as far as the eye can seal. And now I'm curious, what is the better skinning farm? The shovel tusks or the seals? So let's do an experiment. I'm going to spend 1 hour flying around and culling the herds of shovel tusks, and another hour clubbing baby seals to death. And then we'll compare and see which of the 2 horrific acts against nature is the most profitable. And while our hero is busy causing the ecological collapse of the Howling Fjord, let's do another lore deep dive. Today, I want to take a closer look at the Forsaken and what they're getting up to in this zone. Their actions in Wrath of the Lich King have significant impact on the story. For those who have played, you'll likely remember the events at the Wrathgate, one of the most iconic moments of the expansion. But, as that took place in Icecrown, we'll talk more about that when we unlock the area. However, much of the build up to that moment begins right here, in the Howling Fjord. The Forsaken are the undead, humans who had been killed and then raised into undeath by Arthas, the Lich King. But after the Third War, the Lich King's grasp weakened, and some undead were able to gain free will. It was those that became the Forsaken, led by Sylvanas Windrunner. As you can imagine, heading into Northrend to face down Arthas is very personal for them. Sylvanas pushed for a weapon, one that could be used against the Scourge, and thus the new plague, also known as the Forsaken Blight, was created. A weapon deadly to all, and the Howling Fjord was its testing ground. At Vengeance Landing, the Forsaken have you dropping plague vials onto the Alliance. This first live test of the strain successfully demonstrates how effective it is against living targets. The Alliance stood no chance. Then you have New Agamand, once a peaceful village, now a laboratory, where Chief Plaguebringer Harris is tasked with making the strain even more potent. At Howgrind, the Forsaken test their new plague on the Vrykul, although to less satisfying results. The effects are not as instant as on the other test subjects, debilitating and killing them far too slowly for their liking. But overall, the tests in Howling Fjord are a success. This new plague is shaping up to be a powerful new weapon for the Forsaken. However, it has come with an unexpected cost. Sylvanas tasked the Royal Apothecary Society, led by Grand Apothecary Putrus, to create it as quickly as possible, and to do this, they were given broad autonomy. Putrus used that freedom to build a loyal following of apothecaries and operate outside normal oversight. Quietly, a rift began to grow as Putrus and his circle pursue their own goals, drifting away from Sylvanas and the rest of the Forsaken. That rift won't stay quiet for long, and when it breaks, the consequences will be felt by every banner in Northrend. Now, how about we check the skinning results? So, first up, the 1 hour of shovel tasks. That gave us 656 rugged leather, 3 arctic fur, a few meats and flanks, and assortments of greens, and 1 blue. So for the shovel tusk skinning, that's a total of 8,591 gold per hour. Not too bad. Certainly a significant improvement on our last attempt. Now, for seal skinning, we have 757 rugged leather, 11 arctic fur, 465 meats, and only a few greens, giving a total gold per hour of 10,262. That means that currently, the most lucrative activity in the Howling Fjord is killing and skinning seals. I am not too sure how I feel about that, but it had to be done in the name of science. But we'll leave the seals alone for now, as we've got some rare spawns to hunt down. Unfortunately though, when it comes to rare spawns in the Howling Fjord, there aren't many options. There are only 3, and each one has a 100% chance of dropping one specific item. This won't make us a lot of gold, but in the spirit of exploration, I don't want to leave any stone unturned. First up, we have Vigdis the War Maiden, a Vrykul warrior who rides an imposing black proto-drake, and she drops us the Soul-Sealed Belt, worth at most 1,000 gold. Up next, we have Peribas the Bloodthirster, a Worgen prototype that lurks in the foothills. He drops us the Worgen Scored Shackles, a wrist item worth up to 3,700 gold on a good day. Next up, we have King Ping, a penguin, just a big penguin, and it drops us the Egg Warming Blanket, worth up to 3,100 gold. Now, with all the rare spawns taken care of, let's check in on the fishing and see if we've caught anything yet. So I've now spent just over 10 hours hunting down these fangtooth herring fishing schools. Let's have a look at the haul. We've got ourselves 1,000 fangtooth herrings, 703 pygmy suckerfish, 61 crystallized water, and a lot of these reinforced crates. The crates don't really give a whole lot of loot. After opening them all we really got was some Borean leather scraps, cobalt ore, and frostweave cloth. You may have noticed that none of these things are the rares that we're looking for. So we're going to have to keep on fishing. Now you might be asking, what is so special about the 3 items that we're hunting for? Well, I'll tell you. First up, the dark herring. This dagger/fish is required for a fishing achievement. As a result, some people will buy it from the auction house instead of spending the hours fishing it themselves. So it often sells for between 50 and 150,000 gold. Next up, we have Dustbringer, a one-handed dagger that actually has an interesting backstory. A long time ago, some players believed that you could fish up the legendary sword Ashbringer. This belief came about because of a book written by the famous angler Nat Pagel. Only the last page of the book is actually readable, and it states that he knows the location of the legendary sword, and thus people concluded that just maybe you could fish it up. Unfortunately, this wasn't true, but as a tribute, the developers put in the Dustbringer. a dagger that can only be obtained by fishing, and it is so rare, it basically doesn't have a price. The current market data shows it has a value of between 3.8 and 4.2 million gold, but it has no actual sales data. It is so rare and so expensive that it rarely ever sells, and I don't see a reason for people to own it other than because they want to own it. And last but not least, the sea turtle, a mount that is quite slow on land but fast in the water. It has no value as it cannot be sold, but it would be nice to own one. So for now, we'll leave Wheelboy to his fishing and we'll check back later. But up next, we have the crafting professions and the 2 dungeons, Utgarde Keep and Utgarde Pinnacle. There are a few crafting shuffles that could maximize our gold making. The majority of those using enchanting and tailoring, and the best places to get the resources for those 2 professions are the dungeons. And while we have the tailoring profession, there's a chance for us to get a world drop of these shirts. The shirts themselves do sell for a nice amount, but it'll be easier just to sell the recipes for an even larger sum. So with everything in place, it's time we enter the first of the 2 dungeons, Utgarde Keep. And once a day, I can run it on heroic, which means the bosses drop epic gear, which disenchants for even better materials. Because we are now over leveled, it's a fairly simple process of just heading through the dungeon, killing and looting. So a quick jaunt through the Furnace of Hate and the Dragonflyer Pens, and we reach the first boss. A Prince Keleseth and his followers. He is a vampiric dark fallen, which are undead elves in service to the Scourge. He falls quickly and gives us our first 2 epics. We'll save those to disenchant later. Next up, we come across Skarvold and Dauron, a builder and a necromancer. They fight together and then they die together, giving us a couple more epics. And then last up, we have Ingvar the Plunderer. He is known for his legendary brute strength. Rumour has it that he once even bested King Emiron in a brawl. However, the truth of that is unknown, as anyone who tells that tale does not live long enough to tell it again. Ingvar has promised the Lich King that he will hold the keep at all costs, and in doing so, he gives his life as we strike him down, but even in death he is expected to serve. A Valkyr flies down and resurrects him as an undead. But once again, we put him down. And as a reward, he gives us his helmet. And backup copy of his helmet. I guess he keeps a spare. Now with the keep cleared and 6 epics in hand, it's time we move on to Utgarde Pinnacle. And immediately upon entering this dungeon, we can see that the Lich King has a much greater presence. The Scourge are everywhere. And this is confirmed once we reach the first boss, Svala Sorrowgrave, where we actually see a vision of the Lich King himself. Svala was Ingvar the Plunderer's lieutenant, and it was she who discovered the Alliance and the Horde's plans to invade Utgarde, and so she warned the Lich King, giving him time to prepare, and for her service, he transformed her into a Valkyr, a revered warrior maiden of the Scourge. She has this annoying ability where she stun locks you for 25 seconds while you're forced to sit there and watch a sword slowly descend upon you, but other than that, she was fairly easy to take down, and we moved on to our next opponent, who is none other than Gortok Palehoof, a Magnetor, kept frozen as a trophy. But before you can face him, you must unfreeze and take on the 4 lesser trophies first. With them down, we quickly dispatch Gortusk and then move on. Up next, Skadi the Ruthless. The Vrykul assigned nicknames based on accomplishments. Skadi earned his long ago for ruthlessly hunting down Vrykul who sheltered malformed infants, the predecessors to humanity. But the most interesting thing about this boss is that on heroic difficulty, he has a very small chance of dropping the reins of the blue proto-drake, a rare flying mount that would be very nice to have. To kill him, we have to pick up 3 harpoons dropped by his minions, and then launch them out of these cannons to shoot him out of the sky. Once on the ground, he's easy enough to kill. Unfortunately, no blue proto-drake for us today, but we take what we do get and move on to the final boss. King Emiron, once the proud ruler of the northern wastes, until the Vrykul's long slumber, relegated him to insignificance. He regained consciousness to find that his wife had been murdered and his lands besieged by enemies, and so he cast off his mortality and swore fealty to the Lich King. Now he sits on his throne, waiting for us to come so he can finally take his vengeance. Unfortunately for him though, other than when he would stun us to call forth the spirits of previous fallen kings, he posed no real threat. We put him out of his misery, took his loot, and then exited the dungeon with 8 more epics to disenchant. We're not done there though. While we can only do the heroic version once a day, we can run the normal version of the dungeon as much as we want. So I'm going to speed through them for 1 hour and see what kind of gold we can make from the bind on equip blues and greens and any patterns that might drop. I'll be back in a jiffy. So 1 hour later, and this is our haul. A whole host of bind on equip greens and blues that we can sell on the auction house, a range of enchanting materials which we got from disenchanting the epics blues and greens, and 583 frostweave cloth. Without doing any shuffles, selling all this on the auction house would bring us 16,662 gold for the hour. Now that does make dungeon farming the most efficient way to make gold in the Howling Fjord, but you need to take that result with a huge grain of salt. Most of that gold comes from selling the bind on equip greens, and how much we actually get for those will vary wildly. For example, nearly half of that gold per hour comes from this one item, the Shrieking Bow, with a regional sale average of nearly 8,000 gold, but it has a minimum buyout currently of nearly 35,000 gold. Yet, with a regional sale rate of 0.002, it's unlikely to sell for a very long time, if ever. It completely depends on if a collector comes across it at the right time for the right price, which may never happen. But either way, I've put them all up on the auction house, and now let's see if we can get more gold out of the materials that we got, through tailoring and enchanting. Let's start with tailoring, as we have a lot of frostweave cloth we need to make use of. The first shuffle is a very simple one. You can turn the frostweave cloth into bolts of frostweave, and then with the infinite dust we got from disenchanting, we can make bolts of imbued frostweave. This one is very dependent on the market though. Right now, the raw resources are selling for higher than usual, and then the end materials are selling for lower than usual. As a result, this would currently make us a loss, but we'll keep an eye on it for the future, as when things go the other way, it could be a nice quick money maker. We're also going to use the imbued frostweave bolts for other crafts, which brings us to the frostweave bag. We can use those imbued bolts we just made and combine them with Eternium thread from the vendor to make a tidy 13 gold profit per craft. These sell slowly but consistently. Next up, shirts. Currently, the only shirt we can really craft of value is the Green Workman's shirt, but maybe we'll get lucky with some drops later on and be able to craft more. But for now, the Green Workman's shirt can still make us 108 gold profit per craft. However, it is a very competitive market, so we'll have to get quite lucky to sell one. But at a 1000% profit margin, we're definitely going to try. And lastly, the Flying Carpet. A flying mount that, as you guessed, is just a carpet. Now, unfortunately, we can't actually craft this one yet. We need Iceweb Spider Silk, which we can only get from Zoldrak or Storm Peaks. But when we finally unlock those areas, it's definitely a craft we'll come back to, as it can make us over 300 gold per craft. And just like the frostweave bags, it sells slowly but consistently. And next up we have enchanting, and there's 2 shuffles here that we want to take a look at. The first one is very simple. Abyssal Shatter. It takes the abyssal crystals that we get from disenchanting the epics and lets us shatter them into lesser resources, such as Greater Cosmic Essence or Infinite Dust. This shuffle seems to be all about timing it with the market. I've seen some days where the prices of Infinite Dust or Greater Cosmic Essence has gone above that of the Abyssal Shards. And seeing as you get multiple dust or essences for one shard, you can very quickly turn a large profit. Now today isn't one of those days, but that's okay, because we actually need the Abyssal Shards for the second enchanting shuffle, which is Tomb of Illusions, Northrend. Using it allows the owner to collect the weapon enchantment appearance of Berserking, Greater Spell Power, and Icy Chill. It's quite a complicated recipe, but we do have access to all the components. The Abyssal Crystals we get from disenchanting the epics from the dungeons. The Dream Shards we get from disenchanting the blues from the dungeons. The Greater Cosmic Essence we can get from using the Abyssal Shatter on the Abyssal Crystals. The Light Parchment can be purchased from inside of the inn. The only real challenging part is the Eternal Water, which is made by combining 10 crystallized water. And right now, we only have 2 ways to gain crystallized water, and both of them have their problems. The first is through fishing, but it has a very low drop chance. Luckily, we've already been doing a lot of fishing, so we have a nice little backlog of them. The second way to get them is by killing the ice elementals near the Giant's Run. However, this area is a questing area, which means they are a hyperspawn, and Blizzard seem to have implemented a mechanic that lowers the drop rates of hyperspawn if you farm them for too long. I can usually get between 10 and 20 crystallized water before the drop rate plummets to 0. But we now have everything we need, so let's craft one and see what the profit is like. 59 gold, that's not bad. Remember, that's additional gold than if we had sold the raw materials, so it's just a way of making a little extra on the things we farm. Now there's one more shuffle that I want to try before we check our mailbox and potentially spin the wheel again. For this last shuffle, we're going to have to drop Enchanting and drop Tailoring, and then pick up Herbalism and Inscription. Now, for step 1, we're going to need some herbs to work with, so I flew around the zone for a whole hour, grabbing every herb I could find. And this is what we gathered. And now we need to mill the herbs that we've gathered, because what we need is azure pigment, and the only way to get that is by milling northern herbs. And this step alone could be very profitable. We'd turn those herbs into pigments for an extra 1,551 gold. That pretty much doubled the value of the herbs. But instead of selling them right now, we're going to carry on and use them to make ink of the sea. And we can use this ink to research and discover new glyph recipes. Currently, there's only 2 of the glyph recipes that interest us. First of all, Glyph of the Orca, which allows druids to unlock the Orca aquatic form. And then there's the Glyph of Dalaran Brilliance, which allows mages to alter the look of their arcane intellect. Because the price of the ink of the sea is a little bit inflated right now, the only one of those 2 that actually makes us any gold would be the Glyph of Dalaran Brilliance. And unfortunately for us, we can't actually unlock that until we unlock Dalaran. But it's one to keep in mind for later. Now, I think it's time we take a look at the mailbox and see if we've finally earned enough gold to spin the wheel again and unlock a new zone. Between recording episodes, we had some pretty big sales. The Decahedral Dwarven Dice did sell for 16,000 gold, along with a number of green weapons, each selling for over 4,000 gold. We had a red lumberjack shirt tailoring pattern sell for 7,000 gold, along with the Beneficent Bulwark for 2,600 gold. And the rest of it is just made up of all the materials and the greens that we farmed over the last few weeks. Now the moment of truth. Have we made enough to escape this zone? Remember, the target is 200,000 gold. We did it. By the skin of our teeth, we did it. But we can't leave just yet. Remember the fishing challenge? That I cannot leave this zone until I catch one of the 3 rare items? Well, let's see how that's going. And the answer is not great. I've been at this now for nearly 20 hours, and to be honest, I'm starting to doubt myself. The newest comments on Wowhead saying that these items are still fishable in the Howling Fjord are multiple years old. There have been new expansions out since then. Maybe they can't be fished up here anymore. And I'm not sure how much more time I want to spend trying for something that might be impossible. This video is already very late. I might just have to accept failure on this one and move on. But I'll be honest, I'm an incredibly stubborn person. And when I commit to something, I hate giving up before I succeed. And so I kept going. And then, eventually, we fished up the Dark Herring. The easiest of the 3 to get, but it still took me a stupid amount of time. And now that we have it, I don't think we sell it, I think we should equip it. We've already hit the gold target, and I think it would be a good memento for our time in this zone. And then in the next zone, we'll be bludgeoning enemies to death with a fish. Just like we bludgeoned this challenge to death, with stubbornness and determination. And now, the final job. We must send that 200,000 gold off as tribute, and then we can spin the wheel once more. And just like that, we are poor again. Now, let's spin a wheel. I've made a few changes to the wheel since last time. Now, instead of spinning for an expansion and then a zone, I have just put all the zones in the game into one mega wheel. Honestly, I'm a little nervous. I don't think any zone could live up to Howling Fjord. But no more delaying. Let's spin it. The Hinterlands. Another zone that I don't think I've really explored much. Nestled between the Arathi Highlands and the Eastern Plaguelands, it's quite a small zone and easy to miss. I bet that it's a land people rarely set foot in anymore. Perfect for us to discover forgotten secrets. And now, how much gold do we need to earn for the tribute? As we required 200,000 for the Howling Fjord, I've removed that from the list, which leaves 50,000, 100,000, and a WoW token, which on the EU servers is 431,000 gold. So let's give it a spin and see our fate. $50,000. That is honestly a huge relief. I don't think the Hinterlands are going to be a big zone for making gold. If we had got the WoW token, we might have been stuck there for months. But with 50,000, we can relax a bit, explore the zone, spend more time learning the story and the lore, rather than just trying to cram the most efficient gold farming techniques. But who knows, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's actually a secret gold mine. Well, there's only one way to find out, so it's time for us to say goodbye to the Howling Fjord. And as I get on the boat to leave, I actually feel a little bit sad. I've never done a challenge like this before, and it's been a wonderful and unique experience. Games these days have you constantly rushing from one point of interest to the next. Never any time to slow down. There's always some world-ending event that's happening, and it needs to be dealt with right now. But not for me. Those battles for the fate of Azeroth, they're happening somewhere else. But in my own peaceful, quiet corner of the world, time is frozen. And it truly does feel like my own corner. In my 50+ hours here, I think I only ever saw 2 other people, and they were just travellers passing through, whereas I lived here, a part of the zone, just like any other NPC. And as much as the player housing coming soon is quite exciting, the inn at Utgarde felt like a home. It was warm and cozy, and a good place to rest while I was editing the video. And so, I am a little sad to be leaving, but we can always come back if we want. The zone is now forever unlocked for us. And, as sad as I am to leave, I'm equally as excited for our next challenge in the Hinterlands. And now the part of the video where I just ramble at you. And today I have a question for you, and how you answer that question may change the future of this content. Firstly though, I just want to say if you've made it this far, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed the content, please do consider subscribing, liking or commenting on the video. I'm new to this whole YouTube thing, and after my first video, it's become abundantly clear how important engagement is with a video. If you want to support a content creator, those 3 things are both simple and incredibly valuable. Next up, I just want to say once again that this series is based heavily on the Goldbound series by Patholerics. If you haven't seen his stuff, go watch it. It's really good, and these videos wouldn't exist without him. And then lastly, the question. So I've been considering, moving forward, making sure that each zone fits into one full episode, rather than splitting it between multiple episodes. The reason to do this is it means I can build one strong, cohesive story and narrative throughout the zone, whereas when I do it over multiple episodes, it kind of gets split up, and I feel like the quality drops. The downside is that the episodes would be longer. The Howling Fjord alone would have been over 1 hour, which means it will take longer for me to make them and release them. So, the question I need you to answer, would you prefer each zone contained in one episode, making it longer, higher quality, but released less often? Or would you like each zone split across multiple episodes, allowing me to produce them quicker and more regularly? So your choice is basically between quantity or quality. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I will take each answer to heart. Now that's all from me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.